Action Force was a miniaturised version of Palitoy's Action Man, designed to complement Kenner's range of Star Wars toys. Action Force was split into 4 teams: the Military Z Force, Naval Q Force, Space Force and the SAS. Their enemies were the Red Shadows, an evil terrorist organisation led by the insane Baron Ironblood. Aside from his indestructible robots and cloned monsters, Baron also brainwashed his enemies, turned them into mindless suicide bombers, a chilling concept for a child's toy. Due to their long-standing relationship, Hasbro granted Palitoy the use of several G.I. Joe figures and vehicles, which were recoloured to fit the Action Force themes. The range was incredibly popular, as was the comic Battle Action Force. Fleetway's Battle was an established anthology weekly war comic, sister title to the Sci-Fi 2000 AD. Battle is notable for the gritty, realistic war tales Charlie's War, Rat Pack, Major Easy, Johnny Red and much more. On the 4th of June 1983, Battle began a 4-part promotional Action Force comic strip. The story was presented across the double-page centre spreads and back covers, which were the only pages to be printed in colour. 5 promotional mini-comics were then released with several Fleetway titles, continuing the story. On the 8th of October 1983, the Action Force strip joined Battle full-time, changing the cover title to Battle Action Force. With over 20,000 Action Force fan club members, the comic saw a massive surge in new readers. Sadly, Palitoy axed their design department in 1984, and overnight Action Man, Action Force and the Red Shadows were all cancelled. The 1985 release of Action Force toys was Hasbro's G.I. Joe. Repackaged by Palitoy as AF and Cobra, their ranks were augmented with factory overstock from the previous Action Force range. Battle Action Force weathered this transition with the story World Enemy No. 1. Baron Ironblood betrayed the Red Shadows and reinvented himself as Cobra Commander. The strip seemed a gutsy editorial decision at the time until the next wave of toys was released and the cold, hard truth sank in: Action Force and the Red Shadows were no more. The AF and Cobra relaunch coincided with the 10th anniversary of Battle, dated the 9th of March 1985. However, even though they were no longer available on the shelves, Action Force refused to die. Time and again, fan favourites like the Black Major, Red Laser, Red Vulture, the Red Shadows, the SAS and Z Force returned to the pages of the new Battle Action Force, softening the blow for their army of fans. The AF toys and comics soldiered bravely on until Palitoy finally closed their doors. And by sheer fluke, Palitoy released exactly 100 Action Force figures. The last issue of Battle Action Force went on sale the 29th of November 1986, with the culmination of the epic multi-part grand finale, Operation Deep Cover. And Battle Comic eventually ceased fire on the 23rd of January 1988. The popular Action Force website, bloodforthebaron.com, launched on February the 24th, 2003. Created by Jim Marshall, the site swiftly grew to incorporate full toy and comic archives, as well as a vibrant forum. Community projects such as Blood for the Baron Colouring Project and Muton World Tour and Custom of the Month helped breathe new life into the classic toy line. Once word of the Action Force archives reached the United States, a whole new generation of Red Shadow fans was born among the G.I. Joe community. The Red Shadows were invented by Devil's Due Comics. The G.I. Joe Collectors Club released the Vacation in the Shadows box set for the JoeCon 2010 convention. Bloodforthebaron.com's popularity soared. October the 8th, 2013 marked the 30th anniversary of Battle Action Force. As a non-profit project, Bloodforthebaron.com released a set of printed books through Lulu.com. The set comprised of 10 matching 250-page black and white volumes, containing the complete Action Force collection. The strips were presented in the original running order. Quite apart from the copious use of centre spread pages, the weekly chapters vary wildly in length. Battle also had a penchant for using front covers as the first page of the opening story. To counter all this, Jim included the front covers, data files, combat files, the file on the Baron, Cobra Power, battle files, competitions, adverts and the Ground Zero pages. He managed to complete the project with no extra pages remaining. They really are the complete works. Sadly, the books were not great quality, as the scans used for the bloodforthebaron.com Comic Archives and Complete Works project are only 300 dpi. Jim intends to run a companion weekly webcomic to actionforceredux.com, presenting the classic Action Force comics rescanned at 600 dpi and professionally coloured. In 2016, bloodforthebaron.com ran a successful Kickstarter campaign for the first edition of the Palatoys Collector's Guide. Second and third editions were later printed. Further Action Force Kickstarter projects followed in 2021. Action Force The Battle Years by Total Toy Books, and the runaway blockbuster Robo School 2 by Skeletron. The weekly webcomic actionforceredux.com launched on February the 24th, 2022. Bloodforthebaron.com then ran the Action Force 40th Anniversary Palatoy Declassified and Action Force Redux Kickstarter campaigns. See the Action Force 40th Anniversary special for the full history on Palatoy's Action Force. Action Force Redux and Action Force Complete Works weekly webcomic projects would each take a little over 8 years to complete. Theoretically, a printed set of digest editions could both be finished in time for the Battle Action Force 50th Anniversary in October 2033. Action Force Redux is a weekly webcomic and monthly printed comic plotted for 100 issues. Written as an anthology title, the 24 pages of content are broken down into 4 6-page strips. With 4 separate artists assigned to 6 pages a month, deadlines should be easily met. Written by Jim Marshall, every Action Force Redux story is plotted as 4 chapters. This format also provides the framework for the weekly webcomic actionforceredux.com, which is designed to run 3 weeks ahead of the printed comic. The 4th webcomic instalment would be released as each issue goes on sale, so that the audience demand would already be primed. This free promotion would last the entirety of the printed run. There is a further option to reprint the monthly comics as 30 100-page graphic novels. Enthusiasts will want both, as the 4 concurrent storylines would be rearranged into read order. For the 2033 50th anniversary, the complete collection could be repackaged as 10 300-page digest editions. Aside from the 30 graphic novels and 10 digest editions, there is a third reprint option, which is to repackage the entire 100-issue run as Action Force Remix. Every 4 issues of the original anthology comic could be separated into individual Artist Edition variant prints, utilising the relevant B covers for each artist. Action Force Redux issues 1 to 12 are set around the events of World Enemy No. 1 to flesh out both the fall of the Red Shadows and the end of Action Force as we knew it. Written to dovetail into the original Battle Action Force continuity, the comic also explores the unanswered questions for the original Action Force characters who suddenly found themselves conscripted into the new AF and Cobra armies. Action Force Redux issues 13 to 20 are set amongst the Renegade Red Shadows appearances throughout 1985 and 1986. Z-Force and SAS also return for a London in Peril tie-in. The last story arc is a finale set at the end of the original Battle Action Force run after the epic Operation Deep Cover. For issues 21 to 24, Jim has used an existing Palatoy concept for a time jump story. Due to the prevalent anti-war sentiment in 1983 Germany, the Action Force toys were all repackaged as futuristic peacekeepers called the Anti-Terror Teams. ATT, SATT, TSATT and WATT. Set in the year 2011, the squad logos were altered and the character biographies were adapted or completely rewritten. Baron Eisenblutt's terror gang were eco-terrorists. The world of Action Force. The story of Action Force takes place in the year 2011. The world population has long lived in peace and liberty, united under the rule of a democratic world regime. Baron Ironblood, the last criminal, strikes terror with a gang of enslaved adventurers, with thinking robots and the world's most innovative weapons. His goal, to take over the world. The anti-terror teams all operated on strict orders not to kill. All replica guns and knives were replaced with fantasy stun guns. Realistic vehicles like the battle tank, attack cannon and mobile missile system were left out entirely. Baron Eisenblatt also had a crazy matter replicator device which could instantly copy men and machines. Starting with issue 25, Action Force Redux becomes a continuation of the original continuity. BloodForTheBaron.com has recently been granted access to a trove of unreleased Action Force and Red Shadow designs and prototypes intended for the 1985 range. The Action Force toys originally portrayed in Battle Action Force consisted of 7 factions: the SAS, Z-Force, Q-Force, Space Force and the Red Shadows, followed by the new Action Force and Cobra. Jim has introduced 3 more Action Force teams, bringing Special Weapons Force, Assault Force and Action Man. Released prior to the Baron Ironblood era, the 1982 range of Action Force toys was a mixed bag. 10 of the figures were mini Action Men, reproductions of the most popular World War II and Falklands War 12-inch Action Man uniforms. Battle Comic would often feature one-off Battle Badge of Bravery True Life World War II strips. As a salute to Battle Comic, to Action Man toys and the brave generation who fought fascism, for the 10th slot Jim has showcased the 10 mini Action Man figures, retelling 10 dramatic real-life events. The other 1982 figures and vehicles were a totally separate Soldier of the Future concept, originally called Assault Force, who can easily be written in as a new squad. In 2009, the BloodForTheBaron.com community solved the mystery Flash enigma that had eluded G.I. Joe collectors for a decade. A Flash variant was discovered and the owner Ron Connor offered a reward for any further information. We were finally able to bring resolution to Ron with the discovery of the Bombardier and the lost prototype team, Special Weapons Force, with the Bombardier, Boffin, Fixer, Lightning and Sniper. In 2016, Jim was approached by the original Palitoy lead designer, Bob Breakin. He graciously shared all the prototypes and designs they had been working on for the Action Force 1985 release, prior to being made redundant by Palitoy. Thanks to Bob's generosity, unreleased figures such as the Red Raven, Kobel, Koshka and the Cyclopsy Berserkers have finally been unearthed. Not only that, Bob arranged a field trip to the London Victoria and Albert Museum of Childhood Vaults, so that Jim could catalogue the lost Special Weapons Force prototypes. Jim was so inspired by all of this, he integrated all of these reinforcements into the comic as the next generation of Action Force. See the Action Force Palitoy Declassified book for the full story and potential of these unreleased toys. Battle Action Force left a legacy of original characters and a few unresolved plot lines. Chief Administrator behind the Action Force reshuffle was Major Flag. Not only was he instrumental during the tumultuous events of World Enemy No. 1, but he stayed with the comic until the very end. Jim has taken the liberty of naming featured characters General Dalrymple and Major Munro Dayton. United Nations investigator Eric Larson was the pivotal character for the entire epic grand finale Operation Deep Cover. His job was to inspect every aspect of the Action Force operational units, unaware that the Cobra shapeshifter Zartan had replaced his partner Paul Kenning. Additional characters of note were Garnet and Big Sam from Laser Trooper, and Cutter's hovercraft crew from the River of Serpents, Bead Eyes, Omar and McCook. When the Action Force toys and comics changed direction, Space Force Commander Sky Raider disappeared. We never learned of the fate of Sky Raider or his nemesis, Carl Vega. For the 11th strip, Jim Marshall has continued their intergalactic adventures. To that end, he has researched the Palitoy Expanded Universe, looking for outer space themed toys. Jim was astonished to discover the amount of Palitoy and Hasbro crossover in a transatlantic relationship that dates back to the original G.I. Joes. Bullet Man, The Intruder, Commander Power, Shield, Gore, Gargon, Captain Cosmos, the Space Rangers, the Zarganites, and Ron, all share the same unique bond as Action Force and G.I. Joe. The Space Force orbital satellite, Space Force 1, was created for the comic. The station appeared in several Battle Action Force stories: Ironblood's Revenge, Space Battle and Crossfire. However, for the final Space Force story, codenamed Moondancer, the space station was mysteriously replaced, and for some reasons unknown, Commander Skyraider was portrayed as a much angrier man. At the heart of the story was the Apollo 18 conspiracy, which Jim has incorporated into a prologue detailing the destruction of Space Force 1. The 1983 wave of Action Force toys had no Red Shadow spacecraft, so a fleet of dreadnoughts was created for the comic. The Red Shadow robot general, Skeletron, was only available as a promotional mail-away figure. Consequently, he never appeared in a single comic strip. Jim has made Skeletron the supreme commander of the Red Shadow Stinger fleet. One of the most cold-blooded of Baron Ironblood's henchmen was Nightmare, who guested in codenamed Tracker. He was shot with a crossbow bolt and left for dead. Jim has both developed his early years and brought him back as a grizzled veteran. Additional enemy characters are the Red Octopus from Operation Sea Lion and the Red Toed Frogman from Operation Bloodhound. Death in South America had to be one of the weirdest Battle Action Force adventures, where members of the SAS team went toe-to-toe with both Cobra and the ragtag remains of the Red Shadow movement, only to be captured by Nazis. The Red Shadows were revealed to be in league with the geriatric Adolf Hitler and his aged Waffen SS. Jim has made full use of this plot, tying it into the Action Man and Origin arcs. In Jungle Terror, Z-Force battled the mysterious Mamba Men, who were revealed to be taking orders from the Baron Ironblood. In light of his later transformation into Cobra Commander, Jim has retconned the Mamba Men as a proto-Cobra Snake project. Chrono was a young, rebellious super mutant. He was genetically engineered to be the ultimate Cobra weapon in School for Snakes. In the final panel, he swore his revenge against both Cobra and the Red Shadows. The character is crying out to become Serpentor. Jim would have him lead the Mamba Men in an insurgency against Cobra Commander. Lastly, the 1983 Action Force toys had a staggered release. The Q-Force and Space Force teams were only added to the Action Force roster in time for the Christmas market. As a result, the early Battle Action Force stories are outweighed by the SAS and Z-Force. For the 12th and final Action Force Redux strip, Jim has added a further Q-Force and Space Force interludes. Issues 25 to 84 follow a 5-year arc. 1987 sees the return of the Red Shadows in Blood Day. Then a Cobra coup in 1988 changes everything. 1989 has the Red Shadows vs Cobra in the Iron War. 1990 is a full-blown alien invasion. And 1991 is climatic battle for Earth itself. Issues 85 to 96 then switch to the origins of the main characters, bringing the story full circle. A 4-part what-if finale brings the 100-issue saga to a close. Blood for the Baron!